Hello again and welcome to DanWhiteBooks, the book review channel where we add insight into the worlds of literature, both for those who do read and those who don't. Now, over the past year, I have been reading perhaps one of the most famous book series to grace the earth. Of course, you've heard of it. It is Harry Potter. There's no point me trying to do a big reveal on that one. Rather than review a book that has no doubt a dozen reviews already, I thought I'd do things a little differently and instead give my thoughts on the series as a whole and why I think it is essential reading, not just for the storytelling and characters, but for the themes that are so expertly crafted and woven throughout. I'm glad to say I've recently finished reading all of the Harry Potter books, and so now I welcome you to discuss why it is you should read Harry Potter. Before starting here, I can understand that some people are probably sick to death of hearing about Harry Potter, but I can assure you it's not going away, and I have a high belief that these books will be around for a very long time. If you've watched the films and deemed the whole series a write-off, then that is a terrible shame, because the books better put across the deeper ideas that the films struggle to portray. I don't dislike the films at all, but compared to the books, they are lacking. The books offer a greater insight into the true battle that runs throughout, and that is quite simply the battle between good and evil, right and wrong. Harry Potter is a symbol of morality and hope, and a tale that, although features a lot of luck on the part of the main characters, also deals with much loss. In that sense, it can be mirrored to waking life, which will often take away with little to no warning. It's not just the reflections of the bitter ploys we face in reality that the Harry Potter series conveys so very well, it's also that childhood sense of wonder. And that brings me to the first book, which is undoubtedly a children's book, but one that captures such a wondrous, and I'm going to use it, and magical world that does what any great author can do. It creates a truth inside a lie, and that is me quoting a Mr. Stephen King there. The world is brimming with fantasy and intrigue, and much like young Mr. Potter, you are experiencing it all for the first time. The fiction is so deeply immersive, and that is a trend that is captured beautifully throughout the series. It's as if J.K. Rowling has jumped from another dimension and is telling the tales of a universe far from our own. She does an amazing job at creating a parallel wizarding world running secretly beside our own, and no more is this on display in both the Philosopher's Stone and in the Chamber of Secrets. Harry Potter is an ordinary and orphaned boy whose life in the world of muggles or normal people is somewhat tragic and forgettable. Together with the reader, Harry discovers that he is somewhat of a celebrity and quickly goes from a nobody to one of the most famous people in existence. With introductions over, you'd think the series would soon lose pace in the preceding books, but Rowling continues to develop characters, and in some of the best ways I've seen in fiction. Harry Potter's story and the mystery behind his survival is further explored after the first book, and as we enter the Prisoner of Azkaban, we have so many questions that are left open. To the satisfaction of the reader, this book does not disappoint and was one of my favourite of all, despite my dislike for the movie equivalent. What's done so well in this book is the element of mystery. Rowling leads the reader to suspect one outcome and then reveals a twist that flips every previous thought on its head. And still, the origins regarding Harry are further expanded. Harry, despite being known by all and being incredibly famous, is not particularly happy or fulfilled, shall we say. What these books do a good job of explaining is how fame alone, that is despite Harry desperately wanting to be noticed when younger, does not hold a candle to real love. Harry yearns for his parents and for the notion of family, the kind of life his friends, particularly Ronald Weasley, have and take for granted. When tragedy has not taken away something deemed so normal to everyone else, it's easy to understand how such a thing is underappreciated. No one feels the loss Harry has experienced, and without such will never know the pain of never having it. When Harry meets his godfather, Sirius Black, and uncovers the truth, It is a comforting moment, although initially this new character is surrounded in anger, the themes the later books will pick up on. Finally, Harry has a parental figure who can in some sense draw him back to normality despite his life being anything but. Anger and hatred evolve further in the later books, and along with love become pivotal themes. Harry Potter does not want the fame of being a great wizard and would gladly rid himself of this burden if it meant he could be normal. The question of what it is to be normal runs all the way throughout the series. On the one hand, you have a powerful wizard like Lord Voldemort who wants to be noticed by his peers around him and commits much atrocity to do so. And then you have Harry Potter, who has done little to achieve his fame but be loved by others. At school, in the instances where he does gather attention, he's doing it selflessly, or like in the Goblet of Fire, unwillingly. Voldemort does not want to be seen as ordinary on the other hand, it repulses him. He wants to be exceptional. This is beautifully contrast between Harry Potter, who desperately craves a life most take for granted. He yearns for a family to love him. In essence, he wishes to be normal, to be as memorable as any other ordinary person. Rowling shows how powerful it is to simply be loved, and how people who do not have this can be driven to extremes or left to suffer when seeing such love in abundance around them. When Harry is finally given a type of family figure, it is a touching moment, although one that is shattered in the Order of the Phoenix. What this book does so well is to show the darker, more emotional side to Harry, and in groups of people ignoring a truth purely because it is presented in a corrupt manner. It shows the power of belief in mass and proves through upsetting circumstance that we are not in complete control of our lives and that at any moment tragedy can strike. Harry destroys Dumbledore's office in anger as his life is flipped around with the death of his godfather, Sirius Black. It is a heartbreaking moment that reveals the despair in loss and ultimately the consequence of love. It is a bargain we all take. Then we move to the Half-Blood Prince, where we learn the true cunning of Albus Dumbledore, who throughout the previous books has been presented as a great, powerful and wise figure. Dumbledore does what he believes in and does not let his pride and ego get in the way. He does not care for the opinions of others who wish to demean him, and will often perform actions that make it look like he has failed for the greater good of succeeding. That there is a very endearing trait and is incredibly rare to come across in real life. Dumbledore will stick to his beliefs no matter what the consequences are to his self-image. We can easily draw parallels to the famous whistleblowers of our age, who when leaking classified information will be ripped apart by leading figures. Their lives will be destroyed, but they know deep in their heart it is right and will give up all to topple established and corrupt regimes or figures. We learn of the power in self-sacrifice. We also delve deeper into the past of Lord Voldemort, someone who has grown up without love and whose life is centered only around fame, pride, and vanity. He refuses to be anything ordinary and as such refuses to bow even to the most certain of inevitabilities, that being death. Dumbledore's own death comes as a complete shock at the end of the Half-Blood Prince. Harry is left alone with his friends in the final book, the Deathly Hallows, and straight away the darker tone is revealed as Voldemort murders a Muggle-born wizard in Malfoy Manor. The future looks very bleak. The final book does struggle without the usual routine of a Hogwarts school year to mould it. Harry and his friends are left doing a whole lot of nothing throughout the first half. However, what they do learn is the simple notion that even great men are flawed. Dumbledore, who has been made out throughout the series to be the perfect power for good, is revealed to have lived a troubled younger life, tinged with regret, and one that he's carried with him ever since. This breaking of illusion adds to the human element in the series. Great men often learn from a vast array of mistakes and are not simply born the way they appear. Voldemort, of course, presents himself as the opposite. He sees nothing of such things and will judge individuals on their power to dominate others at any given moment. He will not allow for mistakes and will not tolerate failure, despite himself often succumbing to such things. The second part of the Deathly Hallows starts to gain pace, However, it is slightly flawed in its will to let Harry succeed. Nonetheless, it ends the series powerfully and plays further on the ideas introduced in earlier books. Harry Potter sacrifices himself for the greater good, much in the same manner that Dumbledore did before him. Harry is made out to have fled by Lord Voldemort as he was killed. However, this is far from the truth. Such statements just show how much Voldemort's self-image means to him. He expects Harry's friends to flee, but they do not. In the face of loss, their resolve is made stronger. Eventually, the comical and often weaker figure portrayed throughout the series, Neville Longbottom, aids immensely in Voldemort's final demise. A long conversation ensues between Harry and Voldemort, and eventually it is shown that Voldemort's own inability and dismissal of love is the one thing that leads to his demise. Despite wanting to live forever, Voldemort dies completely alone. His failure to foresee love influencing individual actions, even from within his own ranks, aids in his downfall. Hated characters like Severus Snape are redeemed and shown to be led most by human emotion, that same emotion that has saved so many others. Voldemort is killed by his own curse, and his body is piled with the dead like any other. This is a powerful moment that closes the series. Voldemort, although wanting to be this all-powerful and immortal wizard, is cast to the side as if he'd never existed in the first place. In death, he is no different to any other. So let's draw back to the question, why should you read Harry Potter? Well, you should read Harry Potter for its beautiful handling of topics like love, loss, self-sacrifice, and what it truly means to stand up to those who are morally wrong and unjust. You should read it to engage with inspiring characters that reveal to you the true tales of great men and women. And you should read it to understand how vanity, pride, ego, and absolute power can blind a person to the quintessential and most simple of all things we have in our existence, that being one's ability to love and be loved by others. My friends, thank you very much for watching.